So that's the dull bit. Now, let's be more open. The next bit's not a lecture at all. It's really just a discussion of Sheringham seafront, and I'll show you where the trial areas are going to be. Ooh. I'll start my video again. Will I come back? I'm hoping. Oh, excellent. I'll shut my presentation. Are you seeing me again?
Not yet. Yes.
Oh, excellent.
Well, I see everybody at the minute.
I'm back. Hello, everyone. I've got to do another share now, but you've got oh, excellent. Will's alive. That's good. And Marco's bobbing up and down. This is good to see people have survived that. Sorry, it was a bit depressing. Let's try and go till 9. Does that seem too abusive?
No, that's fine. You can
okay. So I was going to bring up Google Earth, and we'll have a quick look at Sheringham.
This is very optimistic of it.
It is. It's amazingly optimistic. I'm going to assume that Google Earth will work.
Look at that.
Awesome. Okay, so we've zoomed in to the coast of North Norfolk, which is on the east coast of the UK. And if you're not familiar with Norfolk, it's sort of the big bottom on England that sticks out of the side halfway down. Norfolk's on top of that, and Suffolk is sort of the sandwich, and Essex is on the bottom.
Mm.
So that's our patch, East Anglia. Sheringham is a rather quaint seaside town that has tried very hard to maintain its character, to the extent of trying not to have a Tesco's for a very long time. But now it has a Tesco's. It's massively popular because it's the only toilet in the whole place that stays open after 7 o'clock. The markings I've got here are proposed test sites for the EIFCA to do some human impact trials. So there's a square off Sheringham, a square off West Runton, WR, and a square off East Runton. But we're going to talk about Sheringham today, just because if you ever wanted to come to North Norfolk and dive or snorkel, then this is the most, I guess, saying unspoilt is a dangerous thing, because I thought of it as unspoilt, but clearly it's under a lot of pressure. It retains some of the characteristics the coast would have had. It has a 2-kilometre long front, and you can dive or snorkel at any point, but there are some sort of key places where we hop in, or places we look for things, and we were just going to talk about that. So I'd encourage you to put up a hand or shout out. You're free to unmute yourself if you want to shout, or put in a comment as we go along. And I think if we go from probably left to right, from west to east, and say that sort of round about this end of town, hopefully you can see my hand waving.
I see it moving.
As we zoom in, this is the end of town where there is a lifeboat launch ramp. And that, roughly speaking, marks the start of this sort of crenellated, lined area of seabed. And those are the chalk gullies. The seabed bathymetry isn't really accurate enough to tell you exactly what they're like, and I'm sure there's a lot of aliasing, but you can see they run off the coast, and theories are that they were cut by Ice Age meltwater. Some blasted through the rock underneath gullies, underneath glaciers, and others probably just as melted water drained off the land.
Yeah. Well, this was above water.
Yeah. Well, this was above water because when there was a lot of ice, there was a lot less water. For some reason, I don't understand the mechanisms. And the glacial meltwater and waters running off the land carried a lot of abrasive sediment. So these were machined out just post the Ice Age and have existed ever since, but were since covered by water. So they're not maintained and haven't been produced by seawater as a marine environment. That's the key thing. And so Sheringham has gravel-backed beaches. You can see the grey there. And there's sort of flint gravel. A sandy stretch of a couple of 100 metres that runs into the chalk, straight into the chalk. This is all chalk. All the sea bit is chalk, but it can be overlain by deposited flints. And so this first run is probably somewhere we'd say this is mostly a flint cobble plain where freed small flints have collected. And so those will be quite mobile, quite sedimenty. Lots of algae over here during the summer, mostly mobile and extremely tough species. There's a lot of abrasion. I don't think the rocks move a huge amount, but the sediment certainly does. And you reach a fringe in that plain and you start on chalk bedrock into sort of larger sort of swoops, gullies, channels, leading out to an area which I'm trying to circle. I should get my annotation thing again, shouldn't I? Where's my annotation thing? There's my annotation thing. So roughly speaking, those are the best of the chalk gullies. And so starting off the lifeboat, sort of these features come in quite close and can be encountered by snorkelers. Easily encountered by snorkelers. I mean, the flinty plain inside is nice, I mean, very good looking, but it gets more exciting as you go out. And even then, it's not super deep. The snorkelers, I suppose, often the snorkelers are very keen on going at low tide. And again, low tide would probably go out to about here.
Yes.
That fair? But you would struggle to get more than 3 meters of water until here. That fair?
Well, it actually gets shallower as you go out, doesn't it? There's that hump, and you can be at about a metre deep on a low tide that far out.
Yes, you can find yourself beached as you go out from one to the other. As divers, we normally go at slack tide, not strictly lowest. And that's when the water won't be travelling parallel to the coast, east or west. And the water will be clearer. But that's between the tides. It's roughly a couple of hours after high or after low. There's some fine adjustments to be done. And so the water is higher. And so we would see still frustratingly low on spring low tides, but most of the time, by the time you're out at the ends of the gullies on a normal dive, you'd be in 7 to 8 meters.
Yes.
And what's the distance to the coast there?
Okay, roughly speaking, this, I think,
you could use the ruler.
Yeah. Oh, I could, couldn't I? Oh, let's do this for. Can I actually? No, I'm annotating. I can't do that at the same time. I think it's about. Oh, good grief!
Oh, what's that?
Stop that! It's a thing. Trying to use the stylus and the note. I think it's about 400 to 500 meters to the end of the gullies, but they are coming in somewhat.
Mm.
So let's. Oh no. Oh, here we go.
That's it.
Oh, there you are. So that's about 520, 530 meters. And that's to the end of the gullies, as was in 2011 to 2017. And so mean, we don't think the gullies extend that far anymore because they've been cut off. So if we reset, you should be in amongst the gullies by the time you've covered
About 300.
300. Yeah, it's about,
Yeah, 300 will take you to the good stuff.
yeah, so about 300 to get to the gullies. And I think this is why I think Chris Taylor, who does lots of nice snorkeling videos, has never been into the big bits, because he goes off the lifeboat ramp and that's where they are closest to the shore. But these are, I mean, these are a very rewarding dive. The gullies in the boxed areas can be, I mean, let's say real gullies are from 1 meter high to 3 meters high in places. 3 meter high gullies are pretty rare now because often, I mean, everything gets rounded off. And there are so many gullies that we don't have a favourite. There was a naive idea from the EIFCA that, well, just where are your favourites? Sort of identify a dive site. And Sheringham is a 2 kilometre long dive site where it's 500 metres deep normally. To go out a kilometre like we have, it's a long swim and you need to be pretty committed. But
and quick to get back before the tide turns.
Yeah, it's a trudge. You can't really afford to hang on, because the tide comes up a lot and will race you from side to side. But as long as you keep heading south, you will always get home. Yeah, so hopefully that's a bit helpful. As you can see, if you are diving Sheringham, there are big areas that are somewhat less interesting. And that's a bit of a shame. It's still, I mean, there's still animals there, but it is somewhat plainer. And we think this is probably the result of sort of construction, shore works, washing out. But however this has happened, there is a distinct sort of dip in the middle of Sheringham. Unfortunately, I'll wipe off all this annotation now so we can move across. Oh, it's reminding me, someone else could draw on this too. Please, please don't. I'll only get confused. So let's shift over a bit. I'm shifting up a bit. So that's our good gullies gone. Let's come out a bit so I can see where we are.
Okay.
Yeah. So we could think of this as central Sheringham. So there's things like, as reference points, there's the Sheringham Museum. Yeah. This piece in the middle is very much a sort of promenading stretch. And I'd say this area was dull.
It is dull. We mostly use it for night dives, don't we?
Yes, it's a nice, safe and even, easy access. And this is, again, one of the things with any Norfolk dive. Sheringham is good because you can walk in and out almost anywhere. This makes for a good night dive. You can see we're getting close to that trial square. And I've said sort of this bit is dull. I mean, there are features beyond it. And I think when we've gone out there, it's quite hit and miss. There's some interesting bits there. They're not as dense or as featured as the gullies. And there's lots of bits of old rubbish and construction pieces, which...
Yeah, lots of metal work and things. Lots of metal wreckage and old wartime bits and pieces as well.
Yeah, big anchors and things, yeah. So I should say, there is wartime wreckage here. So for people who are keen, I will place a spot precisely. I'm pretty sure there's an aircraft engine there. That's not precise at all. Somewhere over there, there's an aircraft engine. Somewhere here, there's an anchor. There's a huge anchor there. What else is there? Oh, there's loads of old rubbish. And part of the old rubbish, as you travel past, is the old sewer outfall. This sort of emplacement is known as the tank, because this was the tank where Victorian sewage was collected. And you can still see kind of the shade of the sewage pipe that runs out. And bizarrely, apparently the sewage pipe stopped being used after they blew up the sewer. Someone smoked. One of the fishermen's grandfathers was killed when the tank exploded because he was smoking over it. So Dawn is crying with tragic emotion.
Yes, that's what I'm doing.
That's what she's doing. Her dad was a fisherman. We can do this. Okay, so there's an old sewer pipe that runs out, and you can see it. You can see the shade on the map of that old pipe. And so this is an area that we identified as the snorkel trail, because 100 years of sea has washed away any influence that the tank had on the sea, and Sheringham sewage now goes to Cromer.
Oh, good.
Where they push it further out to sea. So it's completely unused. So this is the Sheringham snorkel trail. Snorks. And we always suggest is a nice way to sort of get to see sort of the seabed with a point of reference. The raised pipework gets up to about 1.5 meters high. There are some spiky bits, but most of it's quite safe. And lots and lots of shoals of fish. Very nice to have a look round. So I should make that green, because that is a nice bit.
Maybe not in the green sea.
No, I can't see it. Now, so that's an area we'd recommend. And you can swim out further. I've swum out lots and lots further. And this area looks quite gully-esque. But the seabed here is influenced by having had works across it. It is not as deeply featured. And you can see from the fact that there are traces here, that work went all the way through the area. And so we are disputing that this is a good area for evaluating human impacts, because it is no longer complete. And not only that, it will form a barrier to the very intensive fishing which runs east-west. And so it will tend to run up to that point, probably with a bit of a safety margin, because they wouldn't want to get too close. So it will act to concentrate fishing over the remaining best bits of the gullies, which is just the worst possible outcome. And as Dawn said, I mean, just sad and stupid. I mean, they could have placed a test area over the heart of the gullies, preserved the best features. We recommended they close the inshore. They haven't done that. So that's kind of central Sheringham. And then if I clear my annotations and shovel us over a bit more, we get on to West Sheringham. It's not really as extensive. East, you're right. And you might say, well, why are you stopping? Because we tend to dive where we can walk. And simple fact is, the promenade runs out and you have to start walking across the beach. So there's, I mean, 2 or 3 parking spots in the middle of Sheringham, and then it's a walk. So as well as a swim, Marco, there's a bit of hiking to be done as well. The features over to the east are, I mean, we think that actually the bathymetry is misleading, because we think these are coarser, bigger features.
Yes, they're more like outcrops than gullies.
Yeah, I mean, they're further out. There's definitely a kind of a swim to get onto them. But these seem like sort of bigger outcrops of rock and some odd sort of undercutting still going on. So this is interesting, but it's a bit of a trek if you're a snorkeler. I think Lynn was asking about sort of more snorkel trips. We have a snorkel group locally, and I think lots of areas where there's persistent snorkeling do. And I think this kind of thing would want to be done as a group. You could go out here and snorkel. There is really no reason you couldn't snorkel it. It'll be deeper. You'd have to plan a bit more, and you'd probably want someone to act as persistent surface cover in something like a kayak. But as your snorkeling develops, sort of the extra couple of 100 meters to get you out to these areas will be rewarding. It's sort of bigger features, more dramatic, and the further you go, the more things you'll see. Like Dawn was saying, some of the sponges really don't occur until you get deeper water. And whilst I know some snorkelers don't like sort of duck diving down, deeper water will be rewarding. You'll see more stuff. It's well worth going. So that gets us to about 9 with a quick chat about Sheringham. Any questions? I'll leave the map up for a bit so we can point at stuff.
No, you're on your own.
No, they've all gone. What about you, Dawn?
Might have done.
Have you got any questions?
Oh, Rob, can you tell me how far out does the snorkel trail pipe go?
Oh,
I know it starts to break up after a bit.
I'm glad you asked. Let's zoom in. Let's clear that misleading annotation. So that's the groin that comes from the tank.
Mm-hmm.
This one comes from a walk down from a putting green and past a house that used to be toilets called the Wee Retreat. It's the best urine-themed joke in the whole of North Norfolk. You can see the pipe. In fact, you could see it even better if I chose another colour. Let's have red. But you can also see that there are sort of dotted features carrying on. So the pipe itself is about 200 meters long. But people who have battled with it will know it has a gap in the middle. And that makes finding part 2 quite a challenge for a snorkeler. It's not a dead cert for a diver either, because this is an old iron pipe, compasses aren't a dead cert or particularly reliable around it. But this piece is almost continuous. There's then sort of a few bits sort of scattered about, and then a final run out. This is not to be used for navigation. This is only for indication.
I think I've seen further scattered bits as well.
Yeah, I mean, there will be. These are big pieces of pipe, and there's evidence it ran out further. And although this bathymetry looks authoritative, I mean, there's massive sand movements and sort of sediment shifts in this area. So some of these things will be more interesting, and some of these things are a lot less interesting than they look. But that's about the size of it. And mean, a key feature, if you were only a part one person, maybe Mark and Chris, that if you can get to the middle, just past the middle, there's an area we call the cauldron, which is quite a mound of bits of rock. This profile view, and on top it has an iron feature which looks like it has a handle. And as far as I know, there's an enormous chamois that's been resident in there for several years. I didn't see him last year. And so always worth popping down, and he tends to live by the handle. And that's only about 5 meters beyond the end of the first stretch of pipe. And if you've gone that far, you could strike out and see if you can find the other bits. Excellent. Since everybody's being so quiet,
I think they've all gone.
I think they've all gone. They're dead. I'm tempted to take my top off and
No,
run
no,
around.
no.
Oh, Dawn stopped me. I'll put it back on. Thank heavens you can't see what's going on. Okay, I'll drop the map then, and let's be humans again for the last few minutes. Hello, people.
Crikey, there's still loads of people.
Are there?
Hi.
Yeah, I got a different screen to you.
Oh, I fouled that up. Excellent. Excellent. You certainly have. Okay, so we don't want to keep. Well, last time we overran by more than this, which was quite exhilarating.
So we're doing well.
So we're doing well. Hopefully that all seemed reasonably interesting, kept you engaged. Sorry if you've sat through the middle one again after the conference, but we wanted to get a good recording of it. Okay, so last chance. Any questions about any of the talks at all?
Yeah, can I ask about going back to the first one about sponges? These different forms that you get of the same species. Has there been any translocation of the sponges between one place and another to see if they actually change shape? Do people move them around at all?
Oh, that's a thought. I don't think so. It's the kind of thing people should do at university, though, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They would if you took a sponge from a low current area and moved it to a high current area, it would grow back in a completely different shape because it would be shaped by the prevailing wind kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, so nurture.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I haven't
if-
seen. Sorry, go ahead.
Just, but I mean, if you were suggesting that some of the sponge niches might be to do with sort of both current and possibly water chemistry, I just didn't know whether any of that had influence on the form. Because I mean, looking at it from an entirely amateur point of view, you think how is anyone supposed to identify these things if you move
It's
10
hard,
miles down
isn't
the coast?
I know when we went out to some deeper wrecks off sea Palling that were beside a really tall sandbank, the Halichondria bowerbankii there grows like big waving trees. It's more tall and thin than the mermaid's glove. It's ludicrous. It's a big branching thing. And I've never seen it do that anywhere else. But there's a strange current because of the sandbank.
Okay.
Yeah, it's what you'd expect, really. I mean, sponges, like Dawn said, are very plastic. They don't have a floor plan. And trying to organise supermarkets for them would be a nonsense. And so they will be entirely influenced by it's almost like AI design, where you see people design shelves or car parts using fluid dynamics rather than right angles. You see that exotic organic forms created, and this is the kind of process that is forming each individual sponge. So you are getting amazing permutations in these situations, and they will be most similar where the situation is the same. So they will tend to converge. So it would be an amazing and cruel experiment to take some of our poor Norfolk sponges with their odd accents up to Scotland and see how they did. I
Hmm.
think the feeling of most sponges is sponges don't seem to be super sensitive to temperature, but they do or don't like conditions, like sort of presence or not of sediment, temperatures of sediment. There's probably some. I mean, our North Sea gets very cold. It's not moderated, and so it can get to nearly freezing, but equally it can get very warm. Where I've been on sort of sponge focused trips to the Scillies, where people have wet themselves in excitement over silty ledges, which are a very unattractive habitat, with amazing varieties. It's like a little kind of smorgasbord that you'd have on a sort of cruise ship of sponges. You think, well, that's a lovely example of that heliclona. Oh, what fantastic helicondria, just sort of dotted over these things, and
all covered in filth.
all covered in filth. So it wasn't that they needed to be clean, they needed water, and maybe it was stable temperature as well. I've gone off the temperature idea. Forget I said it. Yeah. Interesting and difficult to tell. But good question. Good question. Anybody else? We had messages from Lynn, who may have had to go, saying she looked forward to snorkeling. And Elizabeth had to go and apologised.
Yes, I think that was all of it.
Yeah. Yeah, we honestly don't need to torture anybody for any longer than they want to be tortured for.
I think she's gone.
Oh, yeah. Excellent. So shall we call this evening a day?
I was going to ask if there are good texts for spicule analyses.
Oh, yes, I have got one somewhere.
Yeah. Is the best one still Sponge 5?
Yes, actually, yes. I will send you a link to Habitas for the
Sweet.
Sponge 5 thing. I think that's got spicule preparation in it. And if it hasn't, I've got a photographic guide we made up for something or other that I've got somewhere as well.
Yeah,
I passed it by accident the other day.
Yeah, Sponge 5, I think is probably 15 plus years old. It was a live printable PDF produced chiefly by Bernard and Claire.
Yeah.
Of the Ulster Museum. And so it's suitably nerdy. It's actually quite nicely illustrated, goes into great depth about smells and textures, and does include useful spicule detail for ID. The Sea Search Sponges and Squirts book is more sort of visual field encounters, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
But Sponge 5, which is downloadable, I think search for Sponge V.
Sponge V.
And we
Cool.
have it if you can't find it.
I'll have a look. Thank you. I guess I was also interested to ask a sort of devil's advocate question. In
No.
quite a lot of the talks referred to the dire situation of the interaction with EIFCA and the fishing community. So what's the way forward?
Oh, well, I used to be I sat on the EIFCA Oversight Committee and I was pleased to be involved. In the last 5 years, they have taken a strong stance against finding out more. They produced a very poor assessment of the MCZ, and I responded within a couple of days, and they treated that seriously. So seriously, they never spoke to me about it ever again properly. It's been awful. We have pushed and pushed to get proper stakeholder engagement so that they've focused on industry. So what can we get industry to do? So, why are you deciding what you want industry to do when you're not making an effort to understand what industry is doing? Obviously want to reduce things. So, every time we meet or see someone, we're talking about the designation of the MCZ, which is to protect Marine Conservation Zone, which is to protect the extent and functionality of all its seabed types. I'm hopefully meeting Natural England tomorrow to say, the thing you took seriously 5 years ago, our thinking has moved on a lot from that. Whereas we were thinking, we're seeing damage, and I mean, that was treated as compelling. It was, we have observed damage and we'd like to talk about it. We'd like to work out what is happening here. Now we've had time to think. On every dive now, we think, well, what makes me sure that is a human impact? What's a natural impact? What are the grey areas? So we are still pushing. And I mean, this is why we did the talks, that we need local people still involved so that McNag is a functioning body with more than one voice. Because I mean, it has been increasingly easy to shout me down. And if I go, well, if I say anything rude, then I am a nut job who must be sort of wiped off the face of the earth. If I have another person along, then, this seems to be a sort of a more widely held opinion. So the more voices there are, the better, because at the moment there is no local conservation in the management process at all. So I'm in discussions with the various charities who are in there, who've been used by the EIFCA, and we know there's a kind of a revolving door from NGOs into authorities, where NGOs don't pay well, but they're glamorous. But if you can get into an authority or a government agency, one way or another, you are much more secure and you're much better paid. So there's a real reluctance amongst NGO staff to ruffle feathers, which when you want to make a point is utterly useless. We have the Marine Conservation Society oddly involved in organising stakeholder engagement. They assured us 6 months or so ago that, we said, well, this isn't good enough. And they said, we haven't heard anything about this. The person running it was my friend. How can anything be bad? And so, well, you're getting these complaints persistently because it's been bad. Oh, well, that can't be the problem. So will you agree to all these reasonable things? Oh, yes, no problem at all. And so we should have had a stakeholder meeting last month. It was, Ben Nurse, who came to the conference, talked about seal entanglement, was at a meeting where they agreed to run a meeting in 2 weeks, which we said, that's stupid close. And they were going to put the date out the next day, didn't turn out, so we had to ask. They said, oh, decided to cancel it. We haven't got anything to announce. And so that's not the way it's supposed to work. If this is a bi-directional sort of process, we have things to say. We have things we found. We've held a whole conference. The fact that you are not finished doesn't matter. We want to influence what you are doing. So that's going on. We're hoping, I very much hope we can remove the MCS from this process, because they've been utterly useless. They are just holding on as, hoping to raise funds. It's utterly foul. They are out of money to do anything, but they are staying on the management board of this process until they can find something they think they can raise money for. And they're not acting for conservation. They're just trying to turn over some money. We've got the Blue Marine Foundation in there. They've done industry engagement, which is all the EIFCA has done. So what about conservation engagement? Oh, we weren't asked to do that. Oh, no, you weren't, because it made it much easier for you. So we are pushing at all those things, trying to chip away and say, so you told us to trust these people. Well, look what they've done with this trial area now. They've laid it over an area of seabed that was worked over in the Victorian Edwardian era. It is not natural seabed. And what you've done is that fishing displacement, you've created an end stop in the area of most intensive fishing. You have actually made it more intense by bounding it on one side over the last remaining sort of neo-intact gullies available. It is very hard to see a way forward. It's enormously depressing. And so more people, more things, talking about sort of maintaining the diversity, mean, making these trials actually worthwhile, making the activities obey the definitions within the designation. And I mean, it's very hard to get a purchase on processes which have, I mean, staff with no vested interest at all, other than just sort of turning out objectives. They're not interested in the outcome. They're interested in it ending. If you see what I mean. So I mean, the more involvement, the better. And I remember you saying you might be able to do a bit more. So and Emily staring at you as though she would kill you if you did. So we must try to ask you to do more. But for people in other areas, it would, if you know of parallel things going on, if you've seen similar situations and you have good or bad stories of disasters, it would be very interesting to hear about those. So excellent question. I don't want to keep people here forever, but I mean, be involved, be as involved as you can. If you see a call out for help or you've got a good idea, then just fire it in. Excellent. Over.
Thank you, Rob. I think so one of the things that was really powerful is we were drawn in by a CSearch presentation about the diversity of the chalk reef, and we had no idea. And I think that was so powerful to us. And I feel like you've done such great work in getting that message out there. But I feel like there are also in Norfolk, we have, so the thing that I've always enjoyed for public engagement is the science festival. And I thought that might be, so they allow submissions of any organisation to take a stand on a day in the centre of Norwich. I was thinking that might be quite a good way of reaching a lot of people in a single event in a future year.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I did do a bit of, we've done things for Science Festival occasionally. Weirdly.
Very niche things.
Yeah, well, I didn't, yeah. Yeah, it's you never know. But we have done things and we'll do them again. It's just you spread yourself thin. So if people see an opportunity, then I mean, we'd say if you see an opportunity, sign us up. We have talks ready to go. I've got a nice one I did probably 6 to 8 years ago about the forum as a fish tank. What would you see if the forum was a fish tank? If it's there.
That's cool.
So that could easily be used again, because either people will have died or been too young to remember. I reckon. Not everybody dies. Excellent. Yes. So outlets are good. We really could do with media now, I think. I've not been good at that. We just seem to run out of novelty. Excellent. Okay, shall we let you go?
No, let's keep him tortured for another hour.
You're being tortured too. She's being tortured as well. That's excellent. So I think I would thank everybody for coming along, especially Marco, who's come furthest. I mean, thank you for coming so far. International travel. It's excellent. And our Scottish friends who've dropped in.
Gone home.
Well, it's dark up there. It's darker up there than it is up here. So we appreciate the geographical challenges of dropping in. So thank you ever so much. The plan was to run these two before Christmas, see what kind of response we got. And last one was super quiet. This has been really nice. Got a good turnout. We'll happily do it again. I have already asked Will if he'd do something interesting. I think, what was your interesting idea?
He had lots.
I'll try. We're both. So Emily's also interested in contributing a talk, and we will try and talk about one of the tacks that we record. I don't know. We haven't quite got to slides yet, but we'll get there.
Excellent. We'll talk about some dates in the new year. In fact, we'll choose some dates, and if you can make them, that's great. We'll try and make sure the dates are set so people know they're coming up.
Awesome.
Karen's just said hello, although she's from Orkney. Yeah. That's not a reason not to say hello. But
Because the camera won't work.
Oh, yes. Excellent. So thank you very much. We might even ask Marco to tell us something. my appreciation of Zealand is probably somewhat more superficial than Marco's.
You've just volunteered to do a talk, Marco.
I wouldn't dress it up like being volunteered, not volunteered. Excellent. Let's call it a day before anybody can refuse. Excellent. Thank you all for coming. Been great to see.
Thanks very
you
much.
here and see you written down. Have a good Christmas, Merry New Year. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye,
guys. Happy
Thanks.
Christmas.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bye.